you define pleasure? What sensations really make you feel so alive and just bring a sense of bliss and just life right up to your being? Perhaps you like something soft and lacy, just like my mask here. Perhaps you just like the way it feels across your skin. Just soft, barely there, caressing, and gentle and feminine. Perhaps that sensation is pleasurable to you. Or perhaps you like something a little bit more aggressive, a little bit more masculine. Perhaps pleasure to you is defined as a more aggressive sensation. Perhaps you like your pleasure spiced with fear, spiced with something more than a simple tickle, something a little bit more impactful, maybe even painful, burning, stinging sensation. Maybe it's something in between. Maybe it varies depending on your mood. Okay? So today we're going to kind of talk about pleasure and pain. We're going to talk about just things that make us feel good, as well as suffering and suffering's place in this world. So, like, what do these things have to do? For example, with the full moon in Scorpio and with the Five of Cups tarot card, which is today's card. Well, we're going to talk about that today in our full moon in Scorpio tarot vlog. So welcome. My name is Keisha of New World Tarot, and thank you very much for joining me today for our vlog. So we are actually entering another full moon, and the full moon to me is, of course, a time of feminine power. It's a time of kind of just releasing and really kind of stepping into our greatest power. It's natural for us to kind of ebb and flow, go up and down. Sometimes we feel very powerful and on top of things, and sometimes not so much. And we only have to look around at the world outside of us to know that everything is very cyclical. There is always an up and down, ebb and flow, expansion and contraction to everything. And our lives are no different. The full moon to me is an apex of just coming into our power, just celebrating who you are and just really just shining, and also doing that by releasing what is no longer serving us. Now, this full moon arrives in the sign of Scorpio, and what can we say about Scorpio? Scorpio is, of course, symbolized by the scorpion and is just a water sign. It's known as a fixed water sign, which, if you're someone who knows a little bit about astrology, the fixed signs of the zodiac, there are 4 of them. They are the most intense signs of their element. You know, all 12 signs can be divided into the 4 elements of air, fire, water, and earth. And in each one of those elements, there's one sign that's called fixed. And the fixed signs, to me, are the deepest and most intense version of that element. And Scorpio is the fixed water sign. It is just the most volatile and just intense and just juiciest one. Of course, Scorpio is also associated with sort of magical darkness and shadow work and just sexuality as well as money. So all of these things are a great thing to kind of work on during a full moon or a new moon in Scorpio. Okay? And Scorpio is just intense pleasure, obviously. Scorpio is, of course, a sign that's very much associated with sexuality, and it is definitely a sign of truly finding out what you like and just truly enjoying yourself, enjoying your body, enjoying your time with your partner or partners, and just really just getting really sexy. But Scorpio can also be a time of intense suffering as well. And suffering is truly the subject that we're kind of going to talk about today, because right now, obviously, is a good time to kind of bring this up. This time that we're in right now could actually be giving you, some discomfort, some suffering, or you could be looking out at the world and be thinking, what an awful time. There's just so much suffering and awfulness kind of going on in the world today. And today we're kind of going to take a deeper look at that underneath the microphone and just really kind of check out what's really going on. So before we do that, and just kind of a segue into that, I want to actually talk about a tarot card that is truly kind of one of the cards that's pretty synonymous with the concept of suffering. And this is the Five of Cups card. Okay. And this is, of course, a very famous card that people kind of like, oh, when they pull that, they're like, I'm not sure I want that guy. Huh. And of course it shows, this is your classic Rider-Waite-Smith deck. And it shows this, cloaked figure just looking down so sadly at these 3 spilled cups in front of him, and there are 2 upright cups behind him. So yeah, the Five of Cups is a card that is classically associated with grief, with loss, with emotional suffering. And this card is also associated with Scorpio. It is actually it is ruled by the planet of Mars and the sign of Scorpio. And when you really think about that, Mars is, of course, to me, aggression, can be anger, lots of fire, and Scorpio adds emotional intensity to it as well. So that's one hell of a combination to have. The Hermetic title for this card is the Lord of Loss and Pleasure. The Lord of Loss and Pleasure. And obviously, the name in the picture says it all. This is definitely a card of things, emotions not being, where you want them to be. Definitely a card of emotional suffering. And I actually pulled, so this is obviously the classic Rider-Waite-Smith, and one of the most popular versions, the older ones as well. But I also wanted to pull a couple other ones that I thought were very cool. This is from the Tarot of the Haunted House by Stacia Graham, and this is also the Five of Cups. And we see here the protagonist. Her name is Raven Wandsworth, and in this deck we kind of follow her journey throughout this deck. And here she is in the basement, and she is just really, kind of feeling traumatized and scared of everything that she's witnessed so far in her journey, and she's just not having a good time. So again, we have a card of emotional suffering. Here we have the Five of Vessels from the Alchemical Tarot by Robert Place, and this is another awesome one. Here, this is actually called The Earthquake, is the name of the image on the card. And there's been an earthquake in this photo, and some of the vessels have spilled and some have actually broken. And if you look at the bottom, the broken vessel has actually released a couple birds. And these birds are representing actually the blessings that can come from grief. It represents how your world can get shaken up through suffering and through misfortune, but how actually good things can arise from that. So we'll talk about that in a second. And then we have the Five of Chalices from the Spirit Keeper's Tarot by Benabel Wen, and this is called the Grotesque. Okay, and you can even see in the corners the astrological correspondence here. We have Mars in Scorpio. You see a little Scorpio sign in the corner. And what I like about this, and I actually want to read a little bit from it, because it actually has a really good point to make. So obviously this card is called the Grotesque, and she writes, "The grotesque is loss after the waning of joy, a personal feeling of disfigurement, a mystery, an unseen power rising." So she hints that there actually is power to be found in this feeling of suffering. And she also kind of mentions, obviously the name of the card, the Grotesque, how this feeling actually feels almost like something's wrong with you. You feel kind of have this disfigured sense of yourself. Okay, and I think those are really awesome depictions of the Five of Cups card. And obviously, you know, this card is kind of given a bad rap, but is that truly the case? So let's kind of talk about it. So one thing I kind of want to talk about is, first of all, the spirit's desire on this earth. So if you do believe, you know, that you are a spiritual being, and I believe that. I believe that that is in you. It's in everyone around you, within me. And I also would ask, can spirit be found in everything? And I do believe that is true. Are we spiritually one? Have we come from God, from the universe? If you answer yes to that, then it only makes sense that we are all one. And I believe that even though there's different expressions of spirit here, all over the universe, I believe that spirit ultimately desires to experience oneness with itself. It ultimately desires to want to experience all that there is to experience. I believe that, you know, spirit, when we came to this earth, the moment it chose to enter your body, it wanted to sign on for all the things. It wanted to feel all the feels. And I believe that it was up for feeling everything that there is to feel, not just the good stuff. And ourselves as humans, you know, and our little conscious mind, we have such a limited capacity, and just within society as well, we always embrace and only celebrate the good. You know what I mean? Like, everyone, you should only want things that are good and that are approved of. But you can only need to talk to someone, for example, in a BDSM community, you know, or a kink community, that will tell you that there are so many people that desire to feel feelings that are not socially approved, but that doesn't make them any less important. That doesn't make them any less desirable, and that doesn't make the desires of people that want to experience those things any more evil or anything like that. It's only our perception. And going back to spirit, to me, it makes complete and total sense that you were here to experience everything, regardless of whether it was socially approved, whether anyone else thinks that you should have that. Your spirit is so much bigger than the little parameters that you put on it. And to me, it just explains so much. There actually is an awesome speaker, Srikumar Rao, who I took a class of his online once, and he has this awesome story just about suffering that he calls "Good Thing, Bad Thing, Who Knows?" And it's awesome to hear him tell it, because he has an awesome accent. I just love the way he tells it. But I'm going to kind of paraphrase his story. So once upon a time, there was a merchant father, and he had a son, and, you know, they were poor at first, but they found this beautiful horse, and this horse was worth so much money. And when he brought this horse, he found it, got it for free, but he knew that this was going to help raise his kingdom, or raise his little farm up. Everyone in the village came around and said, "Oh, wow, look at you. You're doing so great. You have this beautiful horse now. Your fortune is on the rise." And the father sort of shrugged and said, "Good thing, bad thing, who knows?" So it turns out the horse ran away. And of course, he had put all his profits in this horse. He was supposed to use this horse to kind of bring in goods into his little establishment that he had going. And then all the villagers kind of came around and shook their head and said, "Oh, you thought You were so rich, but now your horses run away. So now you're poor. And the father just sort of shrugged and said, good thing, bad thing, who knows? So it turns out the horse then returned and brought in a whole harem of other horses with it that also were very valuable. So not only did he get the horse back, but he got a whole bunch of other horses as well, which put his stock back up into the stratosphere. All the villagers came out again. They said, oh, wow, you're really on the rise. Now look at you. You got your horse back and you got other horses. Now you're rich again. And the father just sort of shrugged his shoulders and said, good thing, bad thing, who knows? And eventually what happened was his son was riding one of the horses and he actually got bucked off. He, broke his arm, broke his leg, and the villagers came around again and they're like, now your only son is crippled and good luck, getting a good marriage match for him. And the father just shook his head and just said, shrugged his shoulders, good thing, bad thing, who knows? And this story just goes on and on and on. And it doesn't really end. And the point of it is it's definitely sort of a metaphor for our earthly experience and suffering's place in it. Suffering is a part of earth. And I believe that your spirit knew that and readily and juicily signed on for it. Not just like, I'll put up with it, but I believe, again, your spirit was up for all the things, excitedly up for all the things. And the power that we kind of give suffering is always going to be in our perception of suffering and our perception of what is bad. And in that story, the father exercised just a wise unattachment to, good or bad. He just was very in tune with just the ebb and flow and the totality of the earthly experience. And he didn't really commit to anything as being horrible or, oh God, or, oh, this is great. It just is a part of the earthly experience. You certainly can celebrate it, but just know that it is just earthly experience's natural tendency to ebb and flow and to bring suffering with it as well. Now, so in order now to kind of take that a step further, okay, if I may, I would like to know if you've ever, for example, seen the film Hellraiser. This is, and I'm someone who I really like horror movies, and this is a pretty famous 80s horror movie, pretty scary, and it's very interesting because it kind of really brought in the whole BDSM sort of thing, or it might have been just called sadomasochism by itself at the time in the 80s, I'm not sure. But it kind of, once again, kind of brought that sort of lifestyle into the mainstream in a way that it kind of had never really been before. So it kind of was like 50 Shades of Grey in that way, where it kind of, brought things out to mainstream. But to me, Hellraiser is a good movie, unlike 50 Shades of Grey. And as a really scary and has some amazing imagery. And if you like horror movies, you probably have seen it already. And it's pretty crazy. But that in the whole kind of plot of that movie is a man is in search of all of these pleasures, the most intense pleasures he can find. And eventually he finds this weird, strange puzzle box. And when he maneuvers it, it opens up this realm to these, and they even say, some call them angels, some call them demons, but they're basically spirits called the Cenobites, which are all about intense pleasure. But they're so into the intensity of pleasure that they seek pain and they seek torture, they seek suffering, basically. They're always talking about the sweet suffering. Oh, the sweet suffering. Pinhead, who's like the lead Cenobite, is always going on about that. And how, your suffering will be legendary and that sort of thing. And it obviously is just a, crazy horror movie designed to just, be crazy and to scare people. But I just find it it could also be kind of an interesting analogy in the fact that I believe that our spirit is here to experience earthly experiences. and it's here to find pleasure. And such is the sense of oneness, such is the ancient power in spirit, and such is the wisdom, and such is the bigness and the greatness of spirit, in that it doesn't like to be funneled down into to little tiny segments. Like, it's not only going to like the socially approved things, it's also going to like the darkness. It's also going to like the pain. It's also going to be attracted to the suffering. And when I say like, I mean more so a curiosity, an attraction to something. For example, how many of you, when you're raised, a parent told you, for example, don't touch the burner. You're going to get burned. Don't touch the burner. It's hot. It's going to hurt. Don't touch that. It hurts. And you actually are fearful of it, and you kind of like are maybe even like knowing that they're right, but yet you have to know for yourself. And you just like kind of look at it, and you just want to like, it hurts. You're right. And to me, that's the human spirit. Like, that is just a desire to experience for itself, to know for itself, even when you know it's bad. And there's so many of us, you probably have done this in one way or another, even moving up through your adult life. A lot of people do this more than others. Don't hang out with that person. They're bad news. You know this, but yet what do? Don't date that guy. He's horrible. He'll cheat on you, dog you. Look what he did. I see what he did, but yet that doesn't stop me. I still go and date that guy. Don't try heroin. It's gonna F you up. You're gonna be totally screwed over, and you're gonna be addicted and just hurt and in pain. And what do? You go and try it anyway. And I believe that is just a part of the human spirit. It's just a fascination with the darker aspect of earthly existence. I kind of call it spiritual sadomasochism. It's just a desire to experience and to know even suffering for itself. And again, I just believe our spirits kind of signed on for this experience. Like, sadness, feeling, such sadness that it's really just going to kind of just feel like rip my heart apart. Like, I want to know what that feels like. I would like to know what that is about. And, we especially when we see people that are just very spirited, naturally, it seems to be a tendency for people to kind of be attracted to darker things and to kind of causing suffering for themselves and for others. And society kind of is like, what is this person, stupid? Why do they keep going back to drugs? Why do they keep, sleeping with these awful people? And now, once again, they're kind of got beat up or kind of left in a heap crying to themselves for the 8th time. Why are they so dumb? And I don't think it is always stupidity at all. I believe that it actually is an aspect of the spirit that actually is attracted to this. There's something that is fascinating. They could be spiritually fascinated about that. And it's not even that they may enjoy it. It's just, again, a curiosity and an attraction to kind of keep suffering. So, and one book, by the way, that if this at all kind of interests you, and kind of even takes it further, is a book called Existential Kink by Carolyn Elliott, PhD. And it is really, really, really fascinating. It kind of talks into, again, as a key to shadow work and how we can kind of really heal ourselves by embracing the part of us that likes suffering. So I just kind of want to hopefully have changed your mind, or at least presented a different way, a different perspective to kind of look at suffering. I believe, again, that as in the fullness of our spirits, we knew what was here, and we not just were willing to put up with it, but I believe spirit is so whole and so big and just wants to connect with all expressions of it, that it's just so natural, and it makes so much sense that it actually is going to be here in this earthly journey to experience even the darkness, to experience even the suffering. You know, I think that spirit kind of has a sadomasochistic streak. And again, you know, it's doesn't make sense sometimes for our human minds to wrap around that. But to me, it just makes so much sense when you're talking about something that is bigger, that is just bigger than the totality of everything. It just makes sense that it wants to connect and experience all that there is to experience, even the bad. So before I go, I just want to very, you know, quickly do a super quick tarot draw. And we just want to ask, like, how do we, you know, just tap into a better understanding, a better perspective that can help us to view, you know, the places of pleasure and suffering in this world. Okay. And we have the 10 of Wands, which actually came in pulled in reverse. Okay. So we have the 10 of Wands that came pulled in reverse. And when I think of this card, especially kind of in reverse as it is, I kind of think about just this card to me is associated with just renewal in a way. Like it's kind of like letting what's no longer needed kind of burn out so that you can start anew and start fresh. And what could there be that needs to start over? Perhaps it's our perspective of the way that we are viewing the world, the way that we view suffering. This guy definitely seems like he's suffering a little bit. So maybe we need to take a bigger and more spiritual view of suffering's place in the world. Also, maybe we need to, one thing that causes a lot of suffering too is, again, trying to hold on to so much need for social approval. We try to hold on to so much of so many things that we think we need to be accepted. And that alone is responsible for a lot of suffering in the world, for, you know, a lot of people chasing things, for example, you know, 18 houses and like 5 cars and all that, when that's not what they really want. It's kind of what they're told they want. And, you know, and sometimes also just kind of like we talked about, sometimes, you know, we are kind of wanting things that we're kind of ashamed to want. And it's important to kind of really kind of question that and to let things go that might be oppressing us and holding us back, be it perspectives or be it goals that, and desires, quote unquote desires, fake desires that aren't ours and that are actually society has pushed upon us. Okay, so let go of things that are not needed. All right, well, that's all for today. So thank you so much for joining me today for the full moon in Scorpio vlog. And I hope for your full moon ritual, you do something pleasurable, you know, whether that is, you know, having a nice sexual time or a sensual little ritual or something a little bit, you know, more intense, whatever you like, whatever pleasure means to you. Hopefully you use that and kind of work that into celebrating this full moon in Scorpio. All right, so enjoy your time and we will see you next time. In the meantime, be safe, be happy, and be well. Take care. Bye.